Some people say that Trump is going to save the United States. Others say he's going to destroy it. Which group is right, and is it even possible to know which group is right? Well, the answer to that is yes, it's definitely possible to know which group is right, and in this video we're going to talk about just that. Will Trump save us or destroy us?
Better believe in your mind, 'cause it's everything. You could mold, shape, find almost anything.
Hey everybody, this is Praxis. One of the most irritating things that occurs whenever I will release a video, when it has something to do with politics, the United States, the trajectory of things, and in particular, if Donald Trump gets mentioned, which happens a lot given his position in our political system right now, is that it completely polarizes people into not even really understanding or listening to anything that I say in the video and completely missing the point of it. I tend to kind of operate in a bit of a gray zone where if Donald Trump does something that I think is, neutral or positive or negative, I will call it as such. And people that think that just everything that Donald Trump does is evil or horrible suggest that if I say something neutral about him, which I do frequently, or if I say something positive about him, that I must be like a brainwashed Trump supporter. And people on the other side, the Trump support, certain types of Trump supporters, will suggest that if I say anything neutral that's not positive enough about Trump, or that if I say something, God forbid, negative about Trump, that I must be like some kind of brainwashed MSNBC, Kamala Harris, president of her fan club. So it really polarizes people, and it gets people to turn their brains completely off, not really listen to anything that I say. Now, I'm not bringing that up just because I find that irritating and annoying and stupid, and because it probably is one of the largest reasons that leads to the fact that my channel just kind of flounders and nobody ever really subscribes. And interesting fact, I lose the most subscribers whenever I release a video. The more videos I release, the more subscribers that I lose. I tend to pick up subscribers just kind of like randomly through the month, but whenever I release a video, that's when I get my subscriber dump. So it's kind of an act of self-immolation every time I release a video like this. But the reason I'm talking about this in a video isn't, again, because I find it irritating or annoying or whatever, but because it is really counterproductive to anybody who is interested in prepping and preparedness, for them to be in a world mindset where things are so black and white like that, where they see somebody as being their savior, or they see somebody as being the devil incarnate, and no matter what they do, it can't possibly be a good thing, because either of those positions is really going to lead you to make an awful lot of bad decisions, because you are not making your decisions through your own kind of critical thinking processes. What you are doing is you are letting someone else make decisions, and if you love them, you just adopt whatever they decided, and if you hate that person, you just adopt the opposite of it. Either way, you're letting somebody else make your decisions for you. And as you can imagine, that's not really the best way to have an open mind and think creatively and productively about the situation in our world if you have that kind of knee-jerk kind of flex Pavlovian sort of reaction to everything. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that in this video. Specifically, preparedness. Is it over with Donald Trump? Has he saved us? In the last video that I was referencing Donald Trump in, a lot of people suggested that they thought that I was thinking that, with his tariffs and everything, that, problem solved, Trump has these magical tariffs and he's just going to fix all of our problems, and, there's not really any reason to have any worry anymore. And no, that's not true. I'm still into prepping and preparedness, and whatever Trump may or may not do really doesn't have any real impact on that. And I said that this, one thing about one video is that people take kind of a sliver of things that you're talking about on one topic, and if you don't have like an omnibus video that just encompasses everything about everything, people are going to think like the tiny little representation of that video is your whole thought about this. Leading up to the election, I remember very specifically saying that it doesn't matter whether it's going to be Biden or Kamala Harris or Trump or whoever it might be. What leads to our future isn't the individual personalities that end up getting elected. They just kind of create the flavor of whatever we're living through at that particular moment. What determines the overall trajectory and thrust of our civilization is the facts on the ground, and what is creating our reality. And what is creating our present reality are the types of things that are supporting our civilization. That's been the case with all civilizations in the past. They were created on the backs of various circumstances, various resources, whether those were natural resources or human resources or environmental resources or whatever type of resources, thrust that civilization into whatever position of privilege, up on top of the hill where they were thriving and existing for whatever time was their golden years. Throughout time, civilizations rise and then they fall, and when they fall, it's always it's not because of one particular personality. Like, people will look at Rome and think you had like the sane emperors and then you had the crazy emperors, but what you really had was you had an overextension of their influence. You had a debasement of their monetary supply. They essentially kind of there was a threat from barbarians. See if this sounds familiar, actually. There was a threat from barbarians, and the Romans responded to that threat, 9/11, by sending their military out all over the world, trying to get control over everything. They got frightened by some events that had happened related to people outside their borders, really threw their military out there. Sound familiar? Pumping money into it, running deficit. They had to begin debasing their currency to try to pay people, which means that in their terms, what was their currency? The denarius or something like that. I forget, whatever the Roman currency was. It took more and more, I'm going to say it's the denarius, I don't know. It took more and more, but I'm mostly doing this just so I can show off some of my Latin knowledge, that the plural of denarius would be denarii. I don't know whether that's what they called it. It took more and more and more denarii in order to buy the same amount of goods that you used to be able to spend less denarii on before. Does this sound familiar at all? They were just overextending themselves, bleeding themselves dry, and in response to that, people got more and more polarized. Sound familiar? And then they started, having the series of the insane emperors that were following a lot of the more sane ones. I don't know. I can't think of any corollaries between our modern situation and Rome. Just between those two little anecdotes that I referenced there, but. People will blame the personalities, like, it was Nero fiddled while Rome burned, but it was the situation that was underlying it, where the pillars of their civilization were crumbling out from beneath them. Right now, we have our civilization, which is essentially built on the back of extremely inexpensive, easy to obtain energy. That's been over the past several decades in terms of pretty much fossil fuel energy. It was really easy for us to pump it up. We were able to get it to work for us. We could get an enormous amount of work out of the stuff that we extracted, and it didn't take much work to extract the stuff out. We built this huge, amazing civilization on the back of that stuff, and we're coming to the end of an era of really cheap, easy to access energy. That energy allowed us to build not only our civilization, but also to feed our civilization. A lot of people don't understand this about our food supply. Our food supply is also created by this kind of cheap energy, not just because we can use the fossil fuels in order to harvest all of these crops that we grow, but the very fertilizers that go into the ground are based on these cheap energy sources. I don't remember the name of the scientific process, but some smart individual developed this process, and I believe they named it after themselves, of taking fossil fuels and using them to directly extract atmospheric nitrogen out of our, obviously out of our atmosphere. In the past, we were limited to how much, in terms of how much food that we could produce, because we only had so much nitrogen that we could keep putting back into the soil. But once we were unshackled from the limits of kind of the previous reality by being able to extract a whole heap more of nitrogen out of our atmosphere, we were able to create a lot more food because there's so much fertilizer being put into the ground right now. And because of that, we created what we have referred to as the Green Revolution. It sounds great, and it was. You were able to have all this extra productivity coming out of fields that either couldn't have produced as much in the past or couldn't have produced anything. All this productivity created through this, I wish I could remember the name of the process, but through this process we essentially take fossil fuels, turn them into nitrogen, and turn the nitrogen into fuel. Once that fossil fuel goes away, the fertilizer goes away, And once the fertilizer goes away, the next step in that process. But not to fear, because whether or not we're going to starve to death, anyway, because we're not able to produce as much food as we have in the past, we have population demographic changes happening in our world right now, where people are having fewer and fewer kids, and normally you would have a civilization that is kind of built on the backs of the young, productive people. The older people, just because they're old. I mean, every year that goes by, I get a little bit more of a taste of that. The older you get, the less kind of work that you can do. And in order for that population to exist, you need to have a larger group of young people that are working and being productive in order to kind of support that. But with people having fewer and fewer kids, instead of having a large youthful working population base to support a smaller aging population, that's shrunk, and you have this kind of upside down kind of pyramid shape developing in a lot of countries, where just the ability of working hands to actually get stuff done is also being diminished. So we have the reduction of the pillars of our society, which is these cheap energy sources that are holding us up and allowing us to do all this extra work. You have the age demographics kind of changing, where the actual physical hands are aging, and you are not having as many young working people to be able to support a lot of the the older people in the population. There are so many things that are just facts on the ground that are changing about our society. And, I guess we could choose to have more kids, but can we if we can't feed those kids with the extra food from the extra nitrogen from the cheap fossil fuels? So these are the things that determine whether civilizations rise or fall. And, these are the things that, bring civilizations down. The only two ways that a civilization can survive is to either become sustainable, which it's a dirty word in politics. The idea of sustainability, it's it'd be nice to be sustainable, but it's like it's kind of pie in the skies. We have to worry about like more real things like jobs and etc. But the opposite, or the alternative, I should say, to sustainability is unsustainability. And if something's unsustainable, it means it has to come to an end at some point. And the only two ways of things coming to an end is either in a controlled way, where people are wise and they make self-sacrifices and deal with the reality in a sane way, where we can kind of bring ourselves safely down from our unsustainable levels. That's the option people never tend to choose. And the other option that we always go with, pretty much, I think, at least every example that I can think of, is that we just keep riding it until we collapse. And that's what we're headed for right now. And it doesn't matter whether Donald Trump imposes tariffs or does X, Y, or Z, or anything that Donald Trump does, or any other kind of politician, because the facts on the ground are the facts on the ground. So I stand by my earlier statements that it doesn't really matter who we have. I like to think that there's always a chance that there could be some kind of a transformational leader that could inspire people to self-sacrifice and to greatness as a civilization. We've had a couple of examples of that throughout all of human history. It doesn't come up very frequently. I mean, Donald Trump has elements of that in his kind of his cachet with people, where people are willing, certain people are willing to suffer some degree of self-sacrifice, under Donald Trump's say-so, but. I don't think there's a lot of staying power to that kind of self-sacrifice, because, if you look historically at all the historical leader figures that have inspired people to do things like that in the past, it's always people that were willing to kind of do that themselves, like the Mahatma Gandhis, where, he would live like the people that he was trying to inspire to change. And I don't see Trump doing that, to be totally honest. While I think people have this fervor around him, when the suffering really gets real, I think people are going to be pretty quick to abandon Donald Trump as well. So this is not the end of prepping just because Donald Trump got elected. And the fact that I suggested in a recent video that I didn't think the tariffs were as big a deal as most people are making them out to be, in terms of them being a negative thing, that doesn't mean that I think they're a great idea, and that doesn't mean I think they're going to save us or anything like that. Absolutely not. Well, Let's say probably not. But I mean, you just need to be realistic about things. If you have Trump derangement syndrome where you think everything that he does is awful, it's just going to cloud your judgment. And if he does something like tariffs, which, the crazy thing about the tariffs is that people on the left, a great number of them, were supportive of the idea of tariffs. I mean, it's extra revenue for the government. It's a way of promoting local. It's like, that's like the local thing. It's like buy local. And that's the whole idea of tariffs, is to try to get people to buy local by, raising the price of, the idea of what Donald Trump is doing with China, which is, there was some pushback in the comments. I called China a dictatorship. I think functionally it is. I know they have elections. But I don't see China as being that far removed from where it was during Tiananmen Square. So, I guess you can have a debate there. But, certainly in terms of human rights abuses, et cetera, there are plenty of people on the left that think that, we shouldn't be getting cheap kind of slave-made goods from China. And then, Donald Trump does this thing that's essentially exactly in line with what so many people on the left have been advocating for, but it must be awful just because Trump did it. But then in the same way, on the right, tariffs are extra taxes, and they're being imposed on you. Like, I happen to like German-made cuckoo clocks. I've got a couple in my house. I've been thinking about getting a third one for a long time. They're kind of expensive, so I haven't moved on it. I don't know if I'll ever rationalize having a third one. We have 2 floors. I've got one on each floor. But I really like German-made cuckoo clocks. Putting a tariff on goods that come from Germany, I don't know offhand whether Trump did that or not. I'm not really following it that closely because, again, like I said, I don't think it's all that important. But putting tariffs on things coming from Germany reduces my financial ability to make my own independent choices with what I want to do with my money. It's taxing me extra because the tariffs don't tax the country, the people in the other country. The tariffs are taxing us here. And people on the right are like, the ones with that kind of Trump derangement syndrome that forgot that they were supposed to be against taxes and against all these extra these are government controls on things. This is government putting its finger on the scale of business. And, for free market people, or at least people that claim to be free market people, they should kind of be against it. But because Donald Trump did it, it must be the best thing, since sliced bread. So it's never a good idea to get yourself into the mindset of messiah figures or devil figures, because it's just the antithesis of critical thinking and logic to just think that I'm going to do the opposite of whatever this person suggests, or I'm going to just do whatever this person suggests. It means you're not thinking for yourself one way or the other. And in a world that is on the precipice, in the way that our world is on the precipice, and I really believe that it is, how could it not be? We've seen so many examples throughout history of this same exact set of scenarios playing itself over and over and over and over and over again. Why would we be any different? We're better humans than they were in the past. We're wiser, we're smarter. I don't know. In the same way that I never tend to like to think, when you talk about someone that you dislike in politics, you say, well, they're just stupid. I think that's just a cop-out, thinking, because someone has a different perspective than you do, they must be because they're stupid. In that same way, I think thinking that you're going to do better than anybody else in human history, there's a hubris to that. In the same way, saying, this person's stupid, kind of endowing yourself with that kind of specialness that every single civilization in the past, throughout all of human history that we know about, has faced these same set of challenges that we're facing right now. And they all had historical precedent as well. They could look back through history as well. The development that you see throughout time of castles and embattlements and warfare. People had been through things. They knew what had happened in the past. They knew that there were vulnerabilities. People would look through history, and they had the same kind of retrospective hindsight that we have now. And in every situation, people always failed to make it through. Always. Will this time be any different? Are we that much better than any humans who have come before us? We'll see. That's it, and thanks for watching. Hey YouTube preppers, if you enjoyed this video, here's another that I think you might like. But before you click on it, I wanted to take a moment to thank all the people you see on the right-hand side of your screen. They help to support all the work that I do here over at patreon.com. If you'd like to join them and get your name added to the list, the link's below.